My name is Amber Shamsi. I'm a multimedia journalist. I've been working as a journalist for 18 years and I've pretty much done it all. Radio, television, print, reporter, on the desk as a producer. It started when I was in college. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I thought I'd be a doctor, then I thought I might be an artist, and I went to a teacher of mine and she suggested I intern at the News on Sunday, see how it goes, because I really wanted to be a writer and tell stories, and she thought this was one way of sort of achieving that. And that first sort of month or two that I spent at the News on Sunday, it just transformed the way I saw everything, because I felt like I fitted in a way, and there were really interesting people and they were asking interesting questions and you could write your opinion, and you went out and met interesting people and you could tell their stories. So I never looked back after that. I say I've been working for 18 years, but the truth is that I had to take a few breaks because I had children a couple of times. The first time was I was in another city where I was far from family and I didn't have as much support as I needed, so I had to scale back. And then the second time was again with my second child, and even though I had family support, I felt like my kids were very, very young, under 2 or 3 years old, and they needed more time with me, their mother. And I think it also came naturally where I wanted to spend more time with them. When I started work again, when my youngest daughter was 3, I was very conscious of the fact that many people who had started with me had probably risen higher in the ranks. They were getting better salaries. They had a better reputation, were more well known, and I felt that very keenly. I thought it was a little unfair, and I think it also reflects on women and the gender pay gap globally, because women tend to be caregivers and they tend to take breaks. So when they get back into their careers, they also take a pay cut, even though they are capable, or work even harder just to compensate for that break that they've taken. And I saw that with me as well. I was working 14 to 15 hours. I was taking extra assignments. I was working harder. I was traveling. I didn't let any opportunity go because I was very, very, very conscious of the fact that I had to make up for lost time. But at the same time, I have to confess that I also felt slightly guilty, because whereas I'd given a lot of time to my kids in the last few years, when I got back into work, they got less time from me. And I suppose you kind of rationalize it, you sort of think about it, and I was productive and happy, and that made a difference, and I sleepless nights, all of those things. But now that my daughters are older and I've been working full-time for many years now, I see that they're independent, opinionated girls with a great interest in the world and curious. And that sort of compensates for the guilt mostly, I think. When it comes to work-life balance, I think as much as time is an issue and is something you have to manage, what you also have to manage is guilt. And that guilt comes from yourself as well. You feel it yourself. It can be from your kids sometimes when they want to get something out of you and they're whining and they make you feel guilty. But it also comes from other people, society, family, friends. It's a constant battle. It's a constant negotiation. I think what you do is that you, at the end of the day, you see what you've done throughout the day, whether it's in terms of work, whether in terms of your kids. The key to balancing life and work is just recognizing that both are important to you. Whether it is work and what you do with it and what you get out of it, whether it is your family and your friends, your children. Sometimes you have to get up an extra hour in the morning, sometimes you have to sleep later. And it's just because you're so committed and so dedicated to doing both things. And it isn't easy. And I think it is also harder because of the kind of work that we do with journalism, where it isn't bound by time and schedules. You have to travel. You sometimes can't work within the 8 hours that people normally do. But you sort of just, every day, you sort of think about why this is important, what you do, and this is how you sort of resolve it and balance it. And then you take extra time as well. You give the kids and the family quality time. You just give more of yourself. So you're always trying to balance work and life, but There are sometimes you are confronted with lots of very, very hard experiences. I think one of the ones that is still seared into my memory is when the Army public school attack happened. I was in the office. It was somewhere in mid-afternoon, and my bosses told me that I needed to go to Peshawar to cover that story because it was big. So I went back home and to pack my things. I didn't know how long I was going to be in Peshawar, and my children had just arrived from school. And the image of them in their uniform, and those children from Army Public School in their uniform and who weren't able to come back. And because it was such a huge story, it was such a national tragedy involving young children, it was, everybody was mourning and grief-stricken and horrified. I didn't have time to explain the story to my children. And I also kind of related to the story because it could happen to anybody's child. Mine came back from school in their uniforms. That was very, very hard because I was away from them for several days and I had to come back, and then we talked about it extensively, but I wasn't there for them. I felt that very keenly. But this is a big story. There are also lots of little incidents that happen on a weekly, daily basis. It could be one of my children got sick or had to be taken to the doctor, and I had a deadline, or there was nobody to take care of them at home, and I had to bring them to office. I remember one time as well when my eldest daughter was very, very young. She needed a nap time, and I was recording for radio, and I remember putting her to sleep on the floor in a studio. So lots of little incidents like that have cropped up, kept on cropping up, and you know, you have the way you manage it is that you multitask, and your mind is sort of in different places at the same time. It would be so much more helpful if media organizations and institutions were more supportive of mothers who want to work full time. I've been very fortunate in that my family or my husband have been helpful, or I've had bosses who let me bring my kids to work, or colleagues who engaged the children while I had a deadline. I've also had to, for instance, if I was doing an interview, I've put the kids in a corner and told them to be quiet while we do the interview. So it hasn't been easy. But there have also been cases where I've worked and kids are not allowed in the office. And that made it so much more harder. It made it also harder to justify continuing to work to my family, which obviously interferes with how much you give to your work. So institutions need to be so much more supportive of women, mothers who want to work. As a member and a mentor with the Coalition for Women in Journalism, I'm really excited to pass on anything that I've learned to other mothers who want to continue their careers, because that's what I did. I asked a lot of women who were in journalism, who had children, how they managed, and I learned from their experience. I'd like to pass on anything that I've learned to other professionals who want to continue their careers. And I just want to assure you that it does get easier because your children get older and you just learn how to manage situations a lot better.